Hi everyone, my name is Philipp Meissner. Welcome to What's Next. Today we're diving into one of the most exciting and dynamic markets in the world, India. Joining us is Ameya Prabhu, chairman of Ana Holdings and CEO of Nafa Capital, and an expert in India's growth story. If you've ever wondered where India is heading and how it's shaping the future, this conversation is for you. Ameya is not only the CEO of Nafa Capital, an asset management firm focused on India, but also an author whose work is celebrated globally. His company, Green Day Motors, is involved in the auto business in Africa, and he has served as the president of the Indian Chamber of Commerce, making him a key voice on India's opportunities and challenges. Ameya, welcome to What's Next.
Thank you so much for having me and looking forward to our conversation today.
Ameya, I'm sure that when you were the president of the Indian Chamber of Commerce, you were extremely busy given the huge interest in India right now. What factors are making India one of the most attractive markets for investors at the moment?
I think India being today, of course, we're the fifth largest economy with our GDP slightly over $4 trillion, and we are growing at, depending on who you ask, between 6 and 7%. So I think it's a economy which is growing. Our disposable income is rising. More importantly, we have focus on bringing all sections of society within the economy, and hence today, when I was the president of the chamber, I think it was something which a lot of people were excited about. We actually grew the chamber a lot, not just to domestically. We grew it to throughout the geographical expanse of our country, but more importantly, and I think that shows the interest that people have in India today. We opened 30 chapters in 27 countries. So actually, in Europe, of course, we were in Germany, but we opened from Chile to New Zealand. So that was the spread of what we opened in the US, in Africa, Middle East, Southeast Asia. And I think that shows how interested people were in India, in engaging with India, in doing business with India. But and I think, as our Prime Minister says, the three Ds are what are important for India. First is demographic. Our demographics are positive. Our average population is the age of 35. I mean, we have a large number of people who are young and growing. And more importantly, we have people who are interested in consuming more, spending more, and actually in the process of going to the next level of economic growth. Number two, we have democracy, which is again a very important D. If you see around the world today, there are countries, even so-called democratic countries, are retreating into, I would say, not as democratic as they used to be. But India is a very strong democracy, both at a federal and at a regional level. And I think because of that, we had state elections last year in the country. Certain governments changed, other governments lost seats. So that shows a very robust democracy as opposed to others. And the third D is demand. So, as a byproduct of demography and democracy, we actually have demand. And we have a demand wherein all global companies can actually access India. So, for example, if you look at Meta, you look at Google, they are unable to access China. If you look at a lot of these other countries, which is the other big economy in the world today, India is open for all. India is a market where, just to give an example, I was talking to the chairperson of Salesforce, and Salesforce is, currently the current chairperson of Salesforce used to be the chairperson of our largest bank, State Bank of India. And she was saying that India for Salesforce is today one of the largest markets outside the US. And why is that? Because they see the potential for Salesforce in India. They can't do the same in China, right? Because of several restrictions. And in the last so many years, their workforce has grown 7 times, their revenue has grown several times. So you're actually seeing a very, very drastic increase in their business in India. So again, the dimension is we are open to the world. We are not a restrictive economy. We are open to the world. Foreign investors can come here. I mean, German investors like Siemens have been in India for over 150 years. Mercedes has been in India for almost 70, 80 years. You have, of course, a lot of the mid-sized German companies are also increasingly engaging with India, and the other way around, Indians are investing or are collaborating with Germany. So, for example, TVS, which is one of my business partners, they are the second largest two and three wheeler manufacturer in India and the fourth largest in the world. And I distribute TVS in Africa. But TVS actually has a collaboration with BMW, where in every BMW motorcycle, below 500 cc is actually manufactured by TVS. So I mean that shows you how close our countries also work together.
Mhm.
So and I think in the next stage where we'll go into AI,
Yes.
which and I think I've almost, if I may say that, while European
Mhm.
academics and are doing very well on AI, European business unfortunately is not listening to the academia and moving as quickly. And I think that's where also we can play a big role as Europe and India, wherein I think the Chinese and the Americans are making great strides on AI. I think Europe, with the technological prowess, in India with the market, can really work
Mhm.
together on this sphere.
I agree. I mean, you touched upon technology a lot when you talked about Salesforce, when you talked about AI now. I mean, India is known globally also as a tech hub, right? So when you look at the technology that comes from India, what are the most interesting innovations or companies that you've seen originate from India in the last month?
In the last month, okay, that's
So everything is moving fast, you know? It could be months, it could be years, you choose.
so I mean, firstly, I think India is at an interesting inflection point currently because
Mhm.
if you see, and I'll talk about modern India. I will not talk about ancient India and economy because a lot of people tend to focus on that. I mean, till about 1750, for 2000 years, India and China were over 50% of global GDP, and post the Industrial Revolution, we lost out, and the Europeans were the ones who became dominant because. So I think now, as what they call third industrial revolution, I think we have an opportunity to actually make a quantum leap to the next space. So yes, you're right, people think of India as a technology hub, but I think we've essentially been a services technology hub. We have been. So for example, you watch any big Hollywood blockbuster today which has VFX, anyone, if you see the credits towards the end, you'll have about at least 15 seconds or 20 seconds, which is a lot of names of Indian people, at the end, because a lot of the VFX is done in India, but that's still the back end, right? So we have always been the service element of the technology wave. If you see,
Mhm.
if you ask Intel, or if you ask all the big companies, they have huge offices in India, but a lot of them are support service offices. And even on product development, there's a back-end product development offices. So I would say the interesting part is a lot of the Indians studied in the same institutions in India, the IITs, the IIMs, the other engineering colleges, go to the US and do front-end product development in the US, be it at a Google, Microsoft, be it at, I mean, Meta, any company. I mean, there are so many others. So they do a lot of front-end product development. So what we need to do now is we need to marry this service cost knowledge element we have in India with the ability to do front-end product development at the next level. And I think that's where, if you ask me, that's where the next level of growth will come in for India. Because I think, to be very honest with you, last 1 month I have actually not seen so many interesting technology companies, though I saw a very interesting company on the nano toothpaste side. We're using nanochemicals, they're doing stuff on toothpaste. I actually
Mhm.
saw some very interesting things on biotech. So I think the next phase, which will really come in, will be marrying biotech, I would say technology and biology. I think on the biotech side, and we had one of the fastest and cheapest and best vaccines that came out of India during COVID, called Covaxin, which of course I took and so many others took with almost no side effects. So I think on vaccines, again, historically we've been the manufacturing hub for vaccines, but now we are coming up with
Mhm.
our own vaccines, which is something
Mhm.
which we are looking at. On agri, we are coming up with our own nano urea, nano DAP,
Mhm.
which does targeted molecular delivery, which is also more sustainable in terms of having chemical fertilizers. So
Yes.
interesting things are happening. I think on Ayurveda we are moving from ancient wisdom to modern Ayurveda. But I think
Mhm.
on, say, AI, I think on other aspects of, say, on the third industrial revolution, we really need to take that quantum leap and
Mhm.
now start getting into the product side.
Yeah. So not only a tech hub, but also a biotech hub, which is super interesting.
Yeah.
So people have many prejudices also about India and the way life is in India. What would you say are the biggest misconceptions people have about India?
You know, I'll give you a few. So once I had a delegation come in from Europe who
Mhm.
wanted to invest in India, and they actually came to this office, to this very room where I'm sitting right now, and they were brought by one banker, and then they wanted to invest. They wanted to talk to our investment banking team, and they were actually surprised as to how developed India was in terms of, they thought they'll come here, buy things cheap, give some knowledge, and make money. And a lot of the companies they actually invest in are a lot smaller than the companies in India. So
Mm.
actually their companies are better targets for us to buy than the other way around. These are probably a outlier. I think these are people who don't really do their homework and come in terms of understanding. But I think one misconception a lot of people have is we're actually a fairly large economy today. I mean, we are actually not fairly large. We're the fifth largest and soon to be the fourth largest economy overall GDP perspective. We have a long way to go on GDP per capita. Or this is on a nominal GDP basis. If you look at purchasing power, we're already the third largest. So I
Mhm.
think that's one big misconception people have. The second, I would say, misconception a lot of people have is, and again, depends on who, I must admit, but I think a lot of people feel that India as an economy is generally primarily catering to the, I would say, mid to poorer sections of society. Now, we are a large country. We are about under 1.5 billion people. So you have all sections of society. You have some of the richest people in the world, and we have also a substantial amount of people who are around below the poverty line. So you have to cater to the entire spectrum. So I think when you come to India, it's actually a microcosm of the world when you come here. So as a business, when you come, you need to look at the entire spectrum rather than just think of India as, say, a middle income country or a lower income country. Because I mean, you'll be surprised to see that even on the luxury goods side today, the luxury goods segment is one of the best performing segments in India today. People are
Mhm.
recognizing that, even on, let's say, the amount of concerts that have happened, not just in a Mumbai or a Delhi, but in an Ahmedabad or in a Shillong. Like Ed Sheeran played in Shillong, which is in a small city in northeast of India. It's like, in Meghalaya, it's a very small state in the northeast of our country. So, and of course, Coldplay was in Ahmedabad, and each of they had two concerts. I think they had two or three concerts, and each of them had
Mhm.
120,000 people. Each of them, so you can
Mhm.
imagine the scale.
Yes.
That so basically, I think 30% of Slovenia's population attended these two concerts. So that's the second misconception, and I think third, probably changing, and I think it's changed a lot in the last few years. But say when I was in college 20 years ago, I think people used to think of maybe India as not as forward as, for example, the rest of the world. And I think that again, it depends. There were parts of the country which were not, but there were also parts of the country which were. But again, that I would say that misconception has changed a lot. Like I remember now when you go as an Indian globally, they all think that you are some super techie, which I'm not. I'm an economist, but they think you have like great tech knowledge. And maybe that's a misconception. I think everyone thinks that all Indians are good in technology. I mean, a lot of us are not. Like I'm not. I'm the last. I got a message from one of my IT support team just before this podcast saying that the CCTVs are all working properly, sir. And I was like, if you had asked me to fix it, I have no clue, what to do. So I think that's how bad I am when it comes to tech. So we are a microcosm for the world. We have economists, we have actors. I mean, we are 1.5 billion people, so you can imagine we have a population larger than Europe. So you can imagine how that goes.
And India is often described as a land of contrasts. What do decision makers need to understand about these contrasts when it comes to the opportunities and the challenges that this creates from a business perspective?
I think the contrasts in India are probably starker than anywhere else that I've seen in the world. I have been to over 100 countries by God's grace. And I'll give you a few of these contrasts, and then maybe we can delve into what needs to be done. Now, for example, say I live in Mumbai, I have an office in Chennai in the south. I cannot read the language which is
Mhm.
written because it's literally a different script. I cannot speak the language, which is completely different. And of course, the food and all being different is normal. We are so used to that. And of course, I love the food from that part of the country. So for me, that's not an issue at all. But imagine if I go to Chile, I can read the language. I speak Spanish, so I can speak the language. But 1 hour flight away from Mumbai, I cannot read, I cannot speak.
Mhm.
How it's so when I go to Chennai, I'll speak in English. The
Mhm.
same way I'll speak to you. So you have as much an ability to communicate with them as I do, being coming from Germany. Or
Mhm.
if you're coming from, say, New Zealand, you have as much of an ability to communicate there as I do.
Mhm.
So I think that's one. And I think we are a country with several languages, several communities, several religions, and there's a lot of diversity. And even say the religious practices. So, I'm Hindu, my wife is Hindu, she's from Gujarat, which is the state north of India. In Gujarat, they speak Gujarati. Again, we speak two different languages. Our food is different. And even the religious practices of the same religion. So when we get married, the practices are different. So there's a lot of diversity. We have 28 official languages in the country, and of course, we have several hundred more dialects. So one is the diversity of culture.
Mhm.
Second is the diversity which culture I'm saying, food, language, practices, etc. The second is the diversity when it comes to the way we live. So, for example, in my city, in Mumbai, you will have a apartment which is worth 3 million or $4 million, and next to the apartment is a slum. And the interesting thing is, it's a symbiotic relationship because the people who live in these so called slums or shanty towns are often people who work in offices like ours, or often people who work as support staff at homes, and they make decent money. They all live well. Their kids go to English speaking schools. They all have smartphones. It's just that the real estate prices are so high that they prefer to live there, but they actually live pretty well, in the sense that they'll all have a smartphone, they'll all watch, they'll all have WhatsApp, they'll all consume, because we have some of the lowest data rates in the world in that sense. So that's the second thing. Third is there is complete diversity in terms of what people watch, what people eat, what people think, what people do across the country. And you'll find people in Mumbai or Bangalore who will think similar to Silicon Valley, and you'll find people in say 10 kilometers away who will think similar to their hometown in the state of Uttar Pradesh. So that's another diversity element which comes in. So I think the first step a foreign investor has to do when they come to India is not try to bring in thoughts from their country to India. I think they need to first understand the culture, they need to understand the diversity of the culture, and build in strategies which actually are specific for that. Now, for example, if you see a Pizza Hut menu in India, you will not recognize it. These are all like stuff which is not there anywhere else in the world. You have chicken tikka pizza, like all sorts of different things. So similarly, business strategies that people have, the way Amazon or Uber or started cash was first started in India because Indians do not want to pay cash. Now coming to that. Similarly, so lot of strategies that you have to do for India are actually have to be unique for India. I think before you learn, you must unlearn. So I think when you come to India, you should not come with any biases about doing business here. You should not come with thoughts that okay, this worked in Brazil, so we will do the same here in India. It will not. You'll probably fail. And I think keep your ear close to the ground. And I am saying that those who have their feet on the ground will never fall. So I think keep your feet close to the ground, keep your ear close to the ground, listen to your customer, and I think you will succeed.
Yeah. So, I mean, many listeners are actually entrepreneurs, executives, many probably looking right now into joining the Indian markets. And when you were talking, I saw many parallels between India and Europe with all the diversity, the different languages, and all of that. And one example came to my mind when Walmart came to Germany, and they famously failed because they just took the US concept and wanted to bring it directly to the German market. So a lot of what you were already saying is outlining, what executives should pay close attention to when they come to India. Can you maybe share one example of a company, a global company that came to India and that was very successful in joining the market?
If you see, I'll give you a few examples. And I think the success of a company which is successful is people don't even realize they're not a foreign company.
Yes.
Like when we were growing up, there was, I don't even know if you know, but there's a company called Bata. Bata makes shoes. It's actually a Czech company originally. And Bata, it was the choice of footwear for every person in India. And to the extent that people didn't realize that Bata is a foreign brand. Similarly, Colgate, if you ask a lot of people of say my mother's generation, they won't say toothpaste. They will be like, have you got the Colgate?
Yes.
And that's of course Unilever, which is a very successful company in India. Siemens has been very successful in India. I'm talking first, I'll go for the older companies and then I'll come to some of the younger ones. But Siemens has been successful. Nestle has been very successful. So a lot of them on the consumer side adapted to local tastes, local requirements. Domino's has been extremely successful, very good, strong local partner in India. So in modern times, Google has been successful, Facebook has been successful. Now Salesforce has been successful. And I think the mantras for success, if you ask me, are number one is either you get a right local partner or you get the right local team. So, for example, Uniqlo did not, they came in 100% but got a very strong local team. Zara came in with Tata. Both have done quite well, right? But the search cost of having the wrong partner can be very high because if you have the wrong partner who does not have the right ethical, moral, and at the same time, I would say value system as you, or the cultural ethos that you have, I think that can lead to disaster. So I think number one is the right partner or the right management team. Right now, both work. Maybe historically, right partner was more important, but now we have a lot of strong management professionals from the market who you can hire, incentivize them, and so that's one. Number two is learn a lot from the market. I think your strategies have to be like Starbucks has done very well in India, and that's because their entire food menu is localized. The way they have come into the country, they are also a Tata partner, and they also have been successful, because of the right strategies. So you need to have India-specific strategies. I think one size fits all does not work. Because I think you have to have, and even within India, you need different strategies. Like for example, there are places in India where there are a lot of vegetarians, so you need to have all veg restaurants. Because even if you have a kitchen where they make egg, no one will go to that place. That's another great learning that one has to have, right? And three is India is not a easy place to do business. So it'll take you 5 6 years to set up your business before you find success. I actually say 7 years is what you need. So I think I think it's not a place for quick money. It's a place where you build a business with time, and it's probably, if you last 7 years, you can last 100 years. It's
Yes.
that sort of a market. So it's a market where you need to get in, maybe entrench yourself for a few years, and once you're in, you will actually start seeing a lot of results. So I think be patient. That's the third. Don't get frustrated.
And if somebody wants to start tomorrow, what's the first step they should take? Is it contacting the Chamber of Commerce? Can they maybe connect you with potential partners? Is it going there? What should companies do? What's the first step?
The first step, I think one should visit, and that's what I do. When I go to a foreign country for business, is first, to do business in any country, you need to get the flavor of that place. Feel comfortable, understand. Because I think first you need
Yes.
to understand and respect a country before you can do business in a country. So I always recommend to anybody, go as a tourist, go with your wife, go yourself, go as a tourist, go feel the country, understand the country. That's one. Number two is, yes, you can contact the Chamber of Commerce, you can contact your business partners. I think don't jump on the first person who comes with you. Do your analysis, meet a few people. I would say flirt before you get married, date before you get married. I think it's good to take some time in order to meet a few partners, meet a few clients, meet a few people. And I must tell you that Indians are very helpful. They'll be more than willing to connect you with people, get to know people. And I think depending upon how serious you are on the market, it's also important to have a strong footing in the market. So don't just do I call it suitcase business, wherein you come for 5 days, meet people, go back, come for five. So you can initially do that, but at some point in time, you need to keep your roots in the country. And this is the market where you need that. It's a very out of sight, out of mind sort of a market. So you really need that. So I think what's very important is one has to be patient.
Yes. Hi there. Thank you so much for listening. If you're enjoying what's next and find value in these conversations, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to subscribe or follow the podcast. It's the best way to make sure you never miss an episode, and it helps us bring more incredible insights to you. Your support truly means the world to me. Thank you for being part of this journey. So earlier you mentioned different Ds, the 4 Ds, one of them being demography, and you mentioned that India has a very young population actually. How do you think that this young generation is shaping the culture and the economy of the country going forward?
So we have a very young population, and I think among the larger economies of the world, we have probably one of the youngest populations. But there are countries with younger populations. So I go for my work to Africa often, and you go to Mali, Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, and all these countries. Average population there's 18 to 20. So we are in a unique place wherein we have a young population and a growing economy. So you need a lot of things to come together for you to actually have that dramatic growth which comes in. So I think the young population of India is very confident. There's no hangover of the past on the young population. I think they are very positive. I think they feel that they can conquer the world. I think they're very aspirational. They want more. They want to grow. They want their lives to be way, way, way better than their past. That's all the positives. The negatives, I would say, is their attention span is very low, and that's not just India. All over the world today, the new generation, the attention span is a lot lower. So I was talking to a friend who's coming up with this millet based healthy snack, which also helps you with digestion. And he's got a machine where he can launch four new flavors a week. And I asked him, why do you need four new flavors a week? He's like, that's how quickly people get bored of flavors. I need to have some change. Let's say raw mango, ripe mango, raspberry, cranberry, blueberry. So he has that ability because that's what's happened, I think. So that's one. And I think the loyalty factor, which was there earlier, people who were with companies for 30 years, 40 years, not necessarily a good thing, but the loyalty factor, which was there earlier, is now slowly slipping away. Now they are very willing. So I think a lot of companies also have HR related things they need to look at in terms of retention, in terms of investing in the people. So, while we have a lot of people, we constantly need to actually invest in high quality people, right? So the volumes are there, but we need to invest in high quality people. And you'll be surprised to know that in certain micro segments of our labor force, now, for example, say developers, it's actually cheaper today to get a developer in parts of Europe than
Yes.
in India. So if you get a developer from, say, one of the Baltic countries or Poland or one of the former Yugoslav countries, high quality developers work very hard and they're actually more cost effective than
Yeah.
getting someone in India. So that's something which is very interesting to see.
Yeah. So when we zoom out for a second now and look at the geopolitics a bit, I mean, India is also a key player in geopolitics. You said it's emerging as the fourth largest economy in the world. Do you see that India is rivaling China and the US as a global leader in the coming decades?
If you see geopolitics, and again take zoom out even a bit more, so if you see history, India and China have always been the two largest and most politically significant economies in the world. Always, they have been economies which have played a huge role when it comes to the primary contributors to global GDP. So if you ask me, I always say history goes in circles. So now we are coming back, say 250 odd years. We were probably declining, but last 20 odd years, and now it's accelerating. I would say that growth. We're again coming back. So from that perspective, whenever people used to say, "Are you an emerging economy?" I always said, no, we're not emerging, we are re emerging as an economy, in terms of that. So I think that India's growth is a unique growth wherein we are not a threat to anyone. I think we are a country which is open. We are not, our growth is not against anyone. Our growth is to bring prosperity and, or rather better quality of life for our people. So I think I would not look at it as competition to China or the US. I would say that it's complementary to China or the US. I think it's also a role model for countries in Africa, which will be the next stage of growth. And the reason why we must grow sustainably, because I think the world, as you know, climate change is a big issue. And if Indians start consuming the way the rest of the world does, I think, and I don't expect Europeans or Americans to consume lesser. So it's a zero sum game, really. So beyond that, I think we all need to consume more sustainably. As we grow, we have a very big challenge that we need to grow fast, but we need to grow sustainably. So how do you do that? So I think it's a very unique challenge. And again, India brings out solutions which are low cost solutions. If we are to bring low cost sustainable solutions, I think they could really help other emerging economies or developing economies in Africa and other parts of the world to grow. So I think that's something that we can really do, as a country. So I think geopolitically, yes, India
Yes.
will grow. India will consistently be an important part of the global economic and political story. But I don't see us as competition or rivals to anyone. I actually see our growth as being complementary to the world.
Yeah, and your mention of this sustainable solutions, I think this is not only something, especially when it's low cost, that is relevant for emerging markets. I think this is relevant for all markets around the world. So if you have these kind of green tech solutions, I think this is really like one of the biggest drivers for sustainable growth, as you've outlined. So if I may double click on the geopolitics once more, because India is also in a quite interesting situation right now, because it has for decades maintained a quite delicate balance with strong ties to the West, close trade relationships with China, and energy partnerships with Russia. So, how do you see this balancing act evolving in the future?
I think that's a very good question, Philip. And I think India is a unique country wherein we believe in the concept of Vasudeva Kutumbakam, which is the world is one family. And what you might see as contradictory foreign policy or geopolitical stances actually are a genuine attempt by India to keep good relations with everyone so that we can build strong bridges with countries and bring everyone to the table. So, for example, with China, we have a political dispute regarding the border, and but at the same time, they're our largest trading partner. And while the relationship has seen ups and downs, I think the trade has consistently been strong and been growing. India has been one of the staunchest supporters of the Palestinian cause and has been supporting the existence of a Palestinian state. But at the same time, Israel is one of our closest allies. India is a big believer in the right of Israel to exist and not only exist but thrive, and for Israel to defend itself. So we have, again, people think it's contradictory, but what we truly want is a two-state solution when it comes there. I mean, there's a huge Indian diaspora in the US who've been extremely successful. In Europe, there's a huge Indian diaspora that not only have they done well economically, they've also done well politically. The former Prime Minister of the UK, Rishi Sunak, is of Indian origin. The Prime Minister of Ireland, former Prime Minister of Ireland, Leo Varadkar, is of Indian origin. The former Prime Minister of Portugal, Antonio da Costa, is of Indian origin. Kamala Harris, the former Vice President of the US, who ran for president, is of Indian origin. Kash Patel, who might be the next FBI director, is of Indian origin. Nikki Haley, who was the governor of South Carolina, Trump's ambassador to the UN, and the list goes on. So if you see, Indians have done extremely well politically. And of course, Russia is a very strong supporter of India because we've had strong defense collaboration with them, with the Soviet Union, strong industrial collaboration post the Second World War, and now a lot of energy collaboration. So we don't see these relationships as contradictory. We actually have a very close relationship with Ukraine as well. And some of you may know or may not know, but large number of Indian students actually study in Ukraine for medicine, and Ukraine, Georgia, and Ukraine and India have a very strong relationship. So, I think we don't see these as contradictory. We actually see these as complementary because I think I'm very proud of my country that we actually have relationships with all countries wherein we actually try to be a change maker, a peacemaker, rather than someone who is, taking sides. Because I think that in today's, I would say, multipolar world where people, want you to take sides, I think India is a country which actually brings or tries to bring everyone on the same table, and I think I'm very proud of that. And I think that while not everybody will appreciate the stance in the short run, I think in the long run they will understand and appreciate it, that India's path is the correct path because we don't believe in war. We actually believe that this is not an era of war. This is an era of enhanced geopolitical collaboration because there are real issues we need to solve. I think we need to figure out how we're going to deal with AI. We need to figure out how we're going to deal with climate change. We're going to figure out if there is an extraterrestrial threat, which primarily would be asteroids or something, which can impact the world. And I think these are real issues. We have to find out how do we grow without actually damaging the planet that it becomes unlivable. So I think these are true geopolitical issues that we as a world need to come together and solve. And I think India recognizes that rather than, and I think we try to work with all sides to actually find a solution.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and it gives us hope also because at the moment it seems that everything is becoming more polarized. And if there's actually a country or a person in this country who's trying to build bridges again and trying to unite people through these conflicts, I think this is actually something that everybody would wish for the future. Now, a different topic. Sorry, Amir.
And I was just saying that not only are countries becoming polarized, but also populations within the country are polarized. I mean,
That's
if you
true.
see the US, you have an election coming up in Germany, so you see it firsthand. I
Yes.
think the polarization of societies is so stark now that it's actually very worrying, for me.
Yes, you're right. A different topic now, but maybe it's related. You're also an author, and by the way, also an amazing poet. I could experience this firsthand, different occasions. But what I want to talk about is your book, Rock Babas and Other Stories. Critics have praised it as an ode to the challenges that lives throw at us and the people who rise up to meet them. What can decision makers take away from these short stories that you've written?
Thank you for that, Phil. And I think the book did well. I wrote it during COVID. It's a book of short stories called The Rock Babas and Other Stories. And They essentially speak about the challenges that each character goes through and how they find solutions and abilities to overcome them. And the reason I said the stories in all around the world, across genders, across religions, across nationalities, was to showcase that we're all ultimately human. We're all ultimately going through the
Mhm.
same trials and tribulations and challenges, and we need to figure out how do we overcome them. And I think what leaders should take out of it is, I think we all face are faced with moral dilemmas. We're all faced with, I would say, situations which at the point look insurmountable. But I think if you take a step back and you realize that so many others are in far more starker and more difficult solutions, and they also, find a way. So I think one should breathe, one should take a step back, and again, the solution with time emerges. Now, whether it's a right or wrong solution, time will tell. But it's important to take a decision when it comes to that. And I think, and again, some of them are a bit comical. So one of the stories is called "The Accidental Philanthropist." It's about a very successful Japanese billionaire who's very rich but not very loved, and he gets diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he decides to give his entire money away for charity, and suddenly he becomes very loved, and then he realizes that he's misdiagnosed, and he now wants his money back. So the rest of the story deals with what he does with that. And again, these are, if you think, it might seem comical, but that these are also life choices, right? Do you want money? Do you want love? Do you want fame? Do you want your own success? What is success? What is love? What is happiness? And I think these are, I would say, essential questions that not just leaders but all of us need to ask ourselves, right? That what is it that we hold dear? Because ultimately life is a choice. Do I spend 8 hours at work? Do I spend 6 hours at work and 2 hours with family? So these are choices that we
Yes.
have to make, and ultimately we define our own life. We define our own boundaries, so to say. The idea of the book is to make you think. If you can think on these lines, if your thought process can take you on these lines, if you just come out of it with some more thoughts towards what you go through in your day to day, I think then you make an impact on that person just on that level. I think that's great.
I think we have to do a second podcast just on the book. I think there's so much to unpack there. So, Amir, you're an investor mainly. Without giving any specific advice, what industries or trends in India do you believe hold the greatest potential right now?
So I think, as an economy that's growing, you see opportunity across the spectrum. You see that, let's say, consumer goods are doing well. I think people for the first time are spending more and more on branded goods. 10 years ago, you wouldn't think of anyone drinking A2 milk in India, but now A2 milk companies are growing, doing well. People are actually preferring to move from their neighborhood dairy to buying branded dairy goods. I'm not speaking dairy as such, but I'm talking about consumer goods as a whole. That's something which we are seeing good growth in. Financial services are doing extremely well. Banks, non-banking financial
Mm.
service companies, people are taking more loans, people are taking more credit, people are consuming more. As a byproduct, people are buying more cars. People are so. I think if you see sector-wise, business is doing very well. You're also seeing a lot of growth on techno and tech, on IT. Again, AI is the new theme. Renewable energy companies have grown a lot
Mhm.
in the last few years because incrementally a large percentage of our power comes from renewables. So sector wise in India, most sectors are doing well. But from a foreign investor point of view, there will be certain sectors where the incumbents are so large that you won't probably be able to enter. So you probably have to enter through the public markets to have exposure to them. And similarly, I think the sectors are doing well, but specific companies may do well or may not do well. For example, certain companies will, there's those who don't innovate, those who don't move as quickly with the times, those who don't move as those who don't actually invest as much in newer products and keeping up with the trends. As I said to you, 4 flavors a week, for example, guys who are still maybe rolling out a flavor every 6 months. So guys, so you will see newer titans rise, you will see older titans die, but I think that's evolution when it comes to
Mm.
business. But overall, most sectors tend to do well. I think, of course, certain sectors are slowly dying out. I mean, if you were, say, in the analog telephone business, that's gone. I mean, that's gone almost everywhere in the world, right? In India, again, if you see telephony, we have a company called Geo, which came in, gave in
Yes.
some of the cheapest data in the world. So because of that, today our data is so good that people are watching movies on their phones. A driver or someone is sitting in his car waiting, watching a movie on his phone. So fewer people are going to cinemas because of that. And again, that's probably a trend in other parts of the world as well. Retail becomes more and more organized. Some of the old mom and pop shops are suffering. We have like 15-minute delivery, which has become a big thing. So even some of the incumbents in e-commerce are suffering. Earlier, if you built a business, you could last for a long time. Now the redundancy, or now it becomes so quick that that also becomes a challenge. So I would say the sectors are doing well, but I think within the sectors you have to drill deeper to see which companies are innovating enough, which companies are keeping up with the times enough, to see which companies will do well.
Yes, so tons of opportunity, really. So we like to end the show on a positive note, and we ask all guests this question: what makes you optimistic about the future?
Optimistic about my future, or the future of the world, or of what?
Both, maybe.
So, I mean, I'm an optimist by nature. If you put me at the bottom of a well and the water is rising, I'll believe I'll get out. So I think that level of have insane amounts of positivity and self belief, especially in myself. So I think that, I mean, I think a lot of people find a lot of reasons to be pessimistic about the world today, but I actually find amazing reasons to be optimistic. I think the fact that technology is going the way it is. I have a young son. He's 2-year-old son. He's 2 years and 3 months, and he'll probably live to more than 100 because of what the way medical science is advancing today. I think I'm very optimistic because of where medical science is going. I think we will find a solution for climate change. I think I'm very optimistic also on that. I think that will certainly happen. I don't know if we have a life beyond this one, but as long as we are on this great planet, I think if we can go every day, there's no need to be negative. If we go every day by taking whatever is best of life and immersing that into that. Let me put it this way: I look at life as a meal, right? You have a good meal, you keep the nutrition that you need, and what you don't need, regurgitate that out. I think take the best from what life gives you, and the rest, you need not have it. I think that's the way I'll see life.
Fantastic. Ameya, thank you so much for sharing your insight on what's next for India and for giving our audience so much to think about.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
To our listeners, stay tuned for more thought-provoking conversations on What's Next, where we continue exploring the ideas shaping the future. See you next time.